Okay, it's 2:00, so let's go ahead and start the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority Commission meeting. Call to order. I see Mike Fox is in attendance, Arthur Babbitt's in attendance, Grant Polson as well. On the Oregon side, from the Washington side, in the room is Jacob Anderson, Eric Wilson. Looking on the screen. Jake, is that you, Jake Edwards?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Jake Edwards is online. Looking for others. Anybody?
I believe Mark is Mark Flaming.
I'm here. Mark Flaming is here.
Okay. Mark is here.
That's everyone.
And I think that's everybody. And we do have a quorum, so we'll continue on. Is there any modifications to the agenda? If not, could I have a motion to?
I would move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, let's move on to approval and or correction of the meeting minutes. Firstly, from December the 8th, and then the special session on December the 22nd. Is there any comments on either one of those documents that we need to make corrections? If not, could I have a motion?
I move the meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
For both?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Public comment, 3 minutes per person, 30 minutes max. Is there anybody from the public would like to make a comment? If you're online, raise your hand electronically or in the room. Okay, seeing none, we will continue. Executive reports, co-chairs reports. Jacob, anything?
Two things. Number one, I would just say, Mark, you are a voting member right now since Doug is not here. And the second thing is I gave a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners for Klickitat County. We've made sure that we got who we have available currently on the board reappointed, and we're working to fill the alternate number 2 spot that is currently vacant.
And from the Hood River County, we were also reappointed. So the existing members that were up were reappointed for a 4-year term, which is Arthur, myself, Nate, and Jake Edwards. So we're back in place as well. So we have a full slate.
Comment on that issue. So there is a little bit of a complication, and I mean, all the appointments are fine. Everything's fine. Something that we should put on future discussion is that the process for reappointment, it's unclear in the CFA what the involvement is of the port and the cities in that process. So we went ahead and involved them in that process. But you might argue about the wording of it, and it might be something that we should discuss in the future. You're looking like you don't agree.
No, I know on the Washington side that they send out the notice that we're going to be appointing to them, and then we ask for names from them, from the city of White Salmon and the city of Binghamton. And we did that a few months ago, trying to fill the alternate position and never got any data.
Right, I'm talking about in the situation where you're reappointing
Right.
who are currently serving. So we went forward and presumed that same process was there, but that it winds up adding like 3 months to the process because of the time it takes to
ask
we vote to agree that we're opening the position, and then we send a request to them, have to wait for their next board meeting, then they send the reply and has to wait for our next board meeting. So it can be a 3-month process.
Well, I know there was a letter sent from the port. Was there a letter from the city?
They didn't respond.
Okay.
But we requested those. So anyway, we might want to have a discussion in the future about that process, whether it can be streamlined at all or whether it should be.
Okay. Could I ask for your name, sir?
Chris Beck.
Rick Beck, and your role?
I'm a citizen.
Welcome. And sir?
Aubrey Russell.
My name's Aubrey Russell and I'm a citizen.
Good. Welcome.
I think one of the other things to maybe talk about in that same discussion is just the timing. Because I think we kind of got down here and we got pushed past the end of the year. And there was a little, I don't think it didn't hurt anything, but I could see where you could get in a situation where things are timely and just not having that ambiguity running up to the end of the year would probably be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I tried really hard. I notified the
Nothing
county
against-
staff. The problem was that they thought they understood it and then it came time to execute it and then realized, oh, we have to do all these other steps. And there's not enough time to do these other steps. So
Yeah, there were some questions on the letter they sent afterwards, and we got a correction today or clarification this afternoon. So I think it reads fine.
we have a new administrative assistant, and she's being extremely careful, trying to do everything exactly as she reads the instructions. And she doesn't have the background with history, so that's gonna take a little extra
A
time.
little learning curve.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to project director update.
All right, we continue to coordinate with FHWA and the treaty tribes on the MOAs. Umatilla is to the point of signature. They are doing one last round of review with their Fish and Wildlife Commission and their Board of Trustees this week. Assuming no comments on that, we should hear something towards the end of this week for them to go ahead with signatures. FHWA has signed off already and the Bridge Authority has signed off that they're ready to sign. So hopefully we'll hear from Umatilla this week and we'll get that signed. Don't know if anybody's come on though. The other ones are still in different states of meetings. We've got a Yakima Nation meeting next week. We're working on an in-person meeting the first week in February with them. To continue their discussions. FHWA continues to reach out and discuss with Nez Perce. And we're working on our next meeting with Warm Springs. So the FHW Oregon division on our infra grant, that is still in their legal review. So that still has not, we sent back, remember they sent us comments, we sent responses. It's still in their court for resolving those responses. Once that gets done, then it'll go to OST. The Office of the Secretary of Transportation, but it's waiting on FHWA to sign off first. So we continue to check on that. The Oregon division is also working on pulling out the CDS funds and separating those. If you remember at the request of the states, the congressional directed spending CDS funds were combined with our infra funds. Since the infra timing, we've asked for be separated. So they're in the process of looking at how they can separate those the congressional directed spending funds back out of the infra funds. So
Just as a reminder, the original purpose of that $8 million was to fund the tribal agreements and right-of-way acquisition
and design.
and design.
So
But those first two were the major pieces of it.
so Progressive Design Build Team, they're still working on the bridge monitoring work. I don't know if James is on, is he him or Wes? So Wes is coming out tomorrow. He's going down to finalize all the power beams for the Mount Evans Bridge, and the surveyors are coming out to see if they can pick up the prisms on the bridge and kind of do some calibration. He's also got the additional power cord that we needed for SDS, so he's going to go over and reconnect the SDS and hopefully get it powered up, and then look at trying to get that one online as well. So it's looking like the end of this month we'll get those online and see what the next steps are for getting data collected on that. So.
Yeah, so a reminder again, the reason why we did all of this, the primary reason was to make sure that as we construct the new bridge, we're not hurting the old bridge. But the initial discussion that we had was we were going to do some kind of a test pile program before we got into construction, so we could test that operation against the current bridge, make sure we don't hurt it.
And that's still potential depending on the funding and when that comes in and where we are. We still may want to go out and do that. We want to collect enough information to have a good baseline so that we kind of know what the bridge is doing throughout the seasons. So we get that installed here in January. Hopefully we can get some winter data and then pull some summer data this summer and have a good baseline for what's going on.
But this is the motion data, not weather data, right? Weather data hasn't been installed yet.
The weather has not been installed yet. They're getting that equipment. That'll go up on the towers of the old bridge.
Okay.
They're still in process of getting that installed as well.
And so when that is installed, we'll then have a discussion here about how or whether we should share that information.
Yeah, once we have a full picture of the data and what's coming out, then we can talk about the potential, what options we have to share that data. Just some other key things. One big one that we're working on is still access on the Washington shoreline. So there's a number of options being evaluated to access the Washington shoreline. So we'll continue to do that. That includes coordination with BNSF. You'll see a number of actions in the board meeting today for right-of-way. Those are all to allow us to now actively start moving forward with right-of-way. So we're getting in a good position for that, and you'll see more action related to right-of-way. They're also looking at the stormwater and the hydraulics, trying to figure out pond locations and whether we can combine the ponds, meaning that we can combine what's considered offsite or non-project water, meaning water coming from the city, county, or WashDOT with the water coming from our pond. If we can do that, it makes our pond smaller. If we have to keep them separated, it makes two ponds, so it makes it larger. We're meeting with WashDOT to walk through that and see if we can do a combined pond. That will require the authority to take some action on maintenance. So something to be thinking about is how you want to maintain the stormwater system. Meaning, do you want to contract with one of the local agencies, one of the states, to do your maintenance, or whether or not you want to hire a maintenance crew before the bridge opens.
So where this is on the Washington side.
Yeah.
There's a pond out there now that's kind of hidden and buried. And one option is to try and expand that, put our water into it as well, and then make some kind of a deal of either shared costs or maybe we just take over the cost of it.
Yeah, and you'll have something similar on the Oregon side. There's no pond there today, but there will be a pond on the Oregon side that somebody will have to maintain. So that'll be another one that we'll bring back to you once we have a little more understanding of it. They're also looking at the piping on the bridge to see whether or not that is going to be required, or whether they can collect all the water at the ends and then flow it to the ponds. When we moved the water collection from the median barrier to the outside barrier, it allows for more spread into the walkway paths rather than into travel lanes. There's more restrictions on spread, which is how much the water pulls into a travel lane versus into a walking path. So that may allow us to reduce the amount of pipe on the actual bridge, which would reduce the cost of that conveyance system. It doesn't change treating it, but it just changes the piping of it.
Can you explain the word spread?
So spread is the amount of ponding that would happen at your inlets. So as you'll see around an inlet, there's typically a pond of water. How far that pond is allowed to outreach is considered your spread. So when it's next to a roadway, typically it's not allowed to encroach into the travel lanes. Don't use I-84 as an example.
That was just about the question.
You're not to do it.
Theoretically, you're not supposed to do that. If you move that over, which we have done by having everything slope to the downstream barrier, that spread is bigger in a pedestrian path. So we've got that 20-foot bike pedestrian path that can allow for more ponding than what you can in the 4-foot shoulders on the travel lane. So it may allow us to shorten the number of inlets and shorten the amount of pipe. It'll still all get collected. It'll still all go into the pond. It's just how many pipes and how many inlets do you need to collect it.
So you're basically saying the road, instead of grounding the road at the center line of the travel lanes, it's going to the entire bridge is going to
Single
slant
slope.
down,
Slope from east to west, all the way
downward
down
toward the
river,
west.
down
Yeah.
river.
Previously, if you remember, we had a low point at the median barrier.
Yes.
And we changed that to slope everything to the outside barrier.
Okay.
So that helps in all of that, in that change. So, horizontal and vertical alignments are all set. So
Let me interrupt because I think it's important that one reason why we're doing this is we're trying to maintain the cost of the bridge.
Yeah.
And we've got the 1.12 billion, and we're trying real hard to find ways to optimize the design to drive the cost down. You know, we're going to have some growth someplace else, but we're doing everything we can to try and cramp that down. This is one of the ideas.
And are there negatives to that? The
Um,
only thing I can imagine is
Not-
ice.
yeah, not really. I mean, in a freezing condition, if it's spread out more, you may end up with a little more ice around the inlet, but that's where we'll take that into consideration and leave at least a 10-foot minimum area that the water would not spread into. So the bikes might be constrained in an icy situation into that 10-foot path. But that would be the only downside would be a narrowing of that 20 feet during a high storm event.
I was thinking more of the crowning is helpful so that cars don't slide into each other instead of slide away from each other.
Well, the way we were crowning it, we were actually sloping everything towards the median barrier.
It works, yeah.
It's actually better this way than. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, now that we're gonna move forward with that right of way, do we need to get that money, CDS dollars pulled out and have access to it because of the timing on the right of way acquisition if we're gonna use that?
It's becoming more critical to do that. We've got an appraisal and some different things we need to do in order to be ready for the acquisition. But yes, it is putting some pressure on us needing to get that congressionally directed spending, so we have it since we're actively starting to pursue that right away now.
And
Which all opened up in us getting our rod, right? So when we got our rod in November, that allows you to move forward with your right of way. The things that we're voting on today are more steps towards allowing us to do that. So every day now we're getting closer to needing to do that procurement, which puts the pressure on us needing that.
And we made that point with Federal Highways last Thursday, that we needed that.
The tolling team is also out this week. They're going over to go through the existing toll conditions over at the port just to understand what's there so that they can put their concept of operations together, which they'll bring back to the authority, which will be how you're going to operate the tolling. So they're really just kind of understanding what's being done today so that they can come back and, do you want to keep this? Do you not want to keep this? Do you want A? Do you want B? So we'll start to bring some of that stuff as well back.
That starts to get us thinking about some other bigger things that we're going to have to address, like what do we want to look like operationally when we're operating the bridge? Do we want to have our own services taking care of things, or do we want to sub it out? As an example, this toll. Do we want to have our own tolling management system, or do we want to keep pursuing WashDOT or somebody else doing it for us?
I have a really simple answer on that, which is consistent with what I keep on saying. By the time the bridge is in operation, I want it to be owned and operated by one of the DOTs.
Yeah.
Me too.
So that's my goal. Short of that, I want us to do everything possible to make it so that that's easier in the future.
So that's a good point for everyone to be thinking about, and we'll make sure the tolling team approaches it that way to give you guidance on what gets you more compliant with that versus less.
Yep.
So that you know when you're making a decision if it's helping you in that way or hurting you in that way.
And it's the same answer on stormwater also, by the way,
Right.
that I would see combining stormwater with ODOT on one side and with WashDOT on the other side. If that's a possibility, that sure would make a lot of sense.
Yep. And that's kind of how we're proceeding with things, but we'll bring those back for decisions at some point. So.
Well, part of that conversation is there's multiple ways to do the stormwater. As long as it meets both Oregon and Washington on doing it without a pipe and you can still run it down the side. and they'd be
We're
going.
not talking about, that's different than what we're talking about. When I say we're getting rid of the inlets, we're still gonna collect it in a pipe. It's just where do you start collecting it? So right now, we're collecting it all the way down the bridge. So you start with a smaller pipe at the top because you got less, and that pipe grows all the way to the end. This way, you're just running it down to the bigger pipe at the end, and then it's still running to the ponds. So we're not talking about any direct discharge yet. Now, there may be some diversions.
No,
Yeah,
I
I wasn't talking about direct discharge. I was talking about the pipe underneath and whether you collect it, all the way down it or you collect it just at the end.
Yeah, that's what we're
And
looking at.
making sure that that matches Oregon and Washington's rules.
So is there really a possibility of not having collection until the end of the bridge?
There
The
is.
two ends?
Yeah, there is. They're running the numbers right now to see what that looks like.
Because it seems like, it just seems on the surface, I looked at heavy rains on I-84, you see how much pool is just in the road and short distances. It's hard to imagine the entire bridge having no,
Well, it's half the bridge.
entire half the bridge, still half a mile. Right.
But the other thing that I really suggest that we do is as we study that, let's bring in Salmon Safe.
Yeah.
And make sure we understand their position.
Yep.
We can agree or disagree with it, but let's make sure we understand.
Do you think they may actually, even though in both cases, no water is
I think they'll
going
support it.
directly? Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to make sure that's okay.
I just think of it as how long and how much water are you gonna let drain across the surface before you collect it?
That's
Right.
right. That's exactly it.
And the bridge is shaped like this, so you can, is it the first 2/3?
Is it, oh, shit, like this, you're talking about?
Well,
Just when
and
you
then you
go
gotta
across.
twist it too, shaped like this and this.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll bring more back to you on that. That's just something the design team's working on right now. That's potential, cost savings option that we have.
But I mean, in that, there's also gradations of that. Like you could have an inlet connector every 200 feet down the
Right.
bridge, or you could go every 500 or 600 feet and make it, more and more affordable.
Correct.
It just, people keep talking about, gee, did they think about snow collection? Could you please state that you
Yeah.
thought about snow
We
collection?
are thinking about, we're also thinking about ice removal
Yep.
and the most effective ways to
take
do all
a
of
couple pictures of Alaska right now at Juneau.
At Juneau, yeah.
Yeah.
And those are,
Put that in your mind.
and we'll work on a list, but that goes to all the maintenance things that the authority's gonna have to decide: stormwater maintenance, snow maintenance, bridge maintenance, ITS maintenance, tolling maintenance,
Yes.
intelligent transportation systems, so your cameras, your light poles. Who's gonna maintain those, right? Are you gonna have a maintenance crew at all? Are you gonna not have any kind of a maintenance crew? Are you gonna contract it out? Are you gonna try to do it with locals? Well, at some point, you don't have to decide that today, obviously, but sometime before the bridge opens, you'll need to figure out who's gonna maintain the bridge and do the different maintenance parts.
So when you're looking at that on maintenance, one of the things that's always in the back of my mind, we had original discussion about how do you get rid of snow on that bridge?
Correct.
And one thought is blow it over the side. And if we can actually do that, and I think we ought to ask Salmon Safe, then that's the cheapest way to get rid of it.
And there's some options for that. It depends on what you're treating it with. To what you can, where you can discharge it and how.
If you're putting salt down, you're not gonna be throwing it away.
I hope we're not putting salt down.
People are driving with cars where the undercarriage of the car is covered with salt encrusted slush. Then they go onto the bridge. It dumps onto the bridge and then we're then plowing it over the side. I can't believe that would be permissible.
It probably will not be, but we'll look at those options and bring you back kind of so what I foresee is that there'll be like a maintenance manual for the bridge, and we'll have here's all the maintenance the bridge requires. And then in that manual, we'll determine who's going to do that maintenance.
But I think as we design the bridge,
That open grade makes so
Consider
much
that.
sense right now.
No, I know. I just want to make sure everyone knows that we're talking about these things. So
Yes.
if they keep on asking me, say, hey, do you guys remember that snow has to be removed? Yeah, we thought about that.
Juneau got a special permit to put clean snow in the bay.
That's
Did they? Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so that's the main things we're focused on. Any other questions? Other report? They're all there. One item we had to modify.
could you just spend a couple of seconds on funding? Right now we're being funded out of the two states.
Mhm.
When is the next tranche of money coming from the states? And we're fine so far.
We are good so far. We're funded out. We're using the two funding grants out of Washington and Oregon right now to fund everything. We've got a little bit of left, but that's on money that's already spent. We're just waiting on reimbursement. But primarily your two sources, or all of your two sources, are Washington and Oregon funding. We will see the next round of that at the next biennium, which will be in 27. So right now,
When in 27?
July. So they typically make that decision in July. And now that it's kind of a pre-authorized money, it should go pretty quickly. We've already got the grant agreements in place. So like Washington, when we did it this last time by August, we got the money available. And Oregon even backdated it. So actually, when we signed it, they actually backdated it for us. So I think we're covered there as far as the funding goes. Now, infra grant, we don't know. That could be used. If we get that grant signed, I mean, then we would split the billings up so that there was a share of that infra money.
Yeah, the thought though on the infra grant, the last I heard was that one reason why they're holding back is they want to see the rest of construction.
That FHWA has not changed it. They are still moving forward with the option to fund design and construction. They are anticipating that OST might have a different opinion. But until it gets to Office of Secretary of Transportation, until it gets to them, we will not know how they feel about it. There are examples of it being used for design though.
Okay, so assuming that we don't get any fresh money until July of 27 or June of 27, and we're living off the funding that we've got today, and I know we're fully funded for design and HNTB costs up through
September
of 27?
Yep.
Okay.
Our contract and Kiwa's contract are both fully funded.
Okay. If you take those two numbers and subtract it from the available funding, how much do we have left?
Off of what we got in.
Currently excess.
I want to know how much money we've got to be able to do extra stuff that we wanted to do. Okay, so
I can tell you that.
yeah, so we can't go buy land until we get the feds to break loose this $8 million.
It would be very tight right now to make that decision.
You're talking about right away acquisition.
Yeah, we would have to really look at the numbers and see.
But in our numbers now, we have sufficient funds to do all the geotechnical drilling out in the river.
Yes, we do. If that comes in, there's a couple places where money might come in. If the geotech drilling, it has a contingency of about 353.5 million. If that is all efficient and we don't run into any issues in doing it, and we don't have to use that money, then that could be money that we use for right away. So there's a couple things like that where there's a potential to underrun that we might be able to use it. Currently, both our contract and Kiwa's contracts are running under. If that continues for another 6 months, we would have money from there that we could use for right away. We don't have enough to do all the right away, but we could do a couple key purchases in the next 2 years.
Okay. One other comment that I have on your funding here. I would suggest you guys put in your standard letter a little table that shows aging of getting paid our invoices from the feds and the states. And do like we submitted it 30 days, 60, 90, 120, 120 plus. And let's start getting it very visible to this committee of how the feds and the states are turning things around. We might as well get in that habit now, because when we get into construction, the volume goes up exponentially.
And you're worried about cash flow during construction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was something that was shared with us by FHWA's legal, which was a document that allows for reimbursement off of invoice.
Yes.
So we have indicated to them that we would like to do that. We've sent them a letter that we want to also do the tapered match. So we're waiting on responses for that, but we've indicated we want to be able to.
That's an absolute huge win for us if we can actually make that happen. I'm more concerned right now about the states and the feds. We submit them an invoice to get paid, and they're taking time to make that happen.
The states have been really good.
Yeah.
States have been really good. The feds we're working with on backup documents and making sure that process is efficient.
Can you make a statement on the potential effect of a repeal of Oregon's transportation funding package on this project?
So we were not part of that package. We had our own separate funding through the lottery. So it will have, right now, has no impact to us.
So you're not aware of any way that there would be a tie-in to
And,
this?
and I think if we got wind of that, and I think our lobbyists need to be all over that, if we get wind of that, we got to make sure they understand we're using that money right now.
Yeah, I know. That's why
Yeah.
I expected an answer. I just want to
Yeah.
have us discuss it in public and
Yeah.
make sure that
We hear you.
none of us are misunderstanding.
Yeah, and we've talked to, Dan's talked to both the Oregon and Washington lobbyists. I mean,
I know you guys are on this.
even though it's a short session.
Yeah.
They will be watching both states to
Yeah.
just see if there's anything that pops up like that. So.
Okay, so if we could act as an action item, Amy, to add that invoice aging table to the standard report.
And would you want it like, but you get a bill like 30, 60, 90, or do you want just number of days? Because we have so few things
Well,
we're billing.
actually, I would like to see both the aging and how much we're talking about. So like if an outstanding invoice we submitted for $500,000, it's been sitting someplace for 5 months, and now it's 6 months, and now it's 7 months. I think we need to know that.
So, but just the number of days since our submittal would work.
That's fine. It's flexible. So I'd like to know how many days and how much are we talking?
Right, so our policy currently is submitting invoices every month, one a month, and we can put that in the report.
Okay,
No problem.
good.
You say one a month. What does that mean?
One package of
So all.
one package to
together.
ODOT, yep, and one package to the WSDOT. That's per the agreement.
One each entity. So one to WashDOT, one to Oregon. Per grant, per each.
Perfect.
Right, but you might have a grant where you've gotten paid for September, but you might not have gotten paid for October or something else, or a time before. And so being able to see that visually, I agree with Mike. That's good to know.
We will add that.
Okay.
We're at public affairs. This way.
Right,
Government relations.
chime in for a second.
Government relations.
Yeah, Rob.
Just for curiosity, I mean, I have a lottery invoice right now that I've just signed off on right now, so
Yeah.
should go through.
ODOT's been.
Hey, Rob, we know you're getting it through.
Thanks, Rob.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Rob's been very quick.
Okay, next item is government relations, kind of report.
Yes, thank you. Both Oregon and Washington have short legislative sessions this year, so we've asked both Brad Boswell and Corin Run to join us to give a quick update. Washington gavelled in earlier today, so we'll turn it over to Brad for an update.
Great, thanks, folks. As Dan just mentioned, we have a 60-day session. Starts today. It'll be done kind of the early to mid-March. Everything runs really fast and furious during a short session like this. I want to flag a couple of concerns and things that we are going to probably be navigating this year. And this is, it's unique to Washington, but who knows whether it bleeds over into Oregon or other places. But the first issue that I'm concerned about is, number one, we have a very, very significant general fund budget problem. We are, in spite of a $9 billion, the largest tax package in state history being passed last year, we are still looking at a budget hole of somewhere between $2 and $3 billion right now for the next year, and that is has some potential to grow depending on the February forecast. So that's concerning to me. Now, remember that our bridge project is in the transportation budget, which generally the transportation resources are in pretty good shape. And we did do a very significant transportation package, which funded us to the 125 last session. Here's my concern. Part of that transportation package from last year was some diversion from the general fund over to transportation, specifically sales tax on vehicles and things like that. That is now coming under scrutiny and whether that can continue. So that's a wild card that we're going to be monitoring and engaging. The other issue that I have some concern around for those of folks who kind of monitor Washington, we have what's called the Climate Commitment Act, which is our carbon taxing program or carbon resource program, which also helps fund transportation programs. So it's specifically designed within the transportation budget to help um, mitigate carbon impacts. So it helps fund things like transit and other sort of programmatic things like that. That the CCA funding is also being looked at by the general fund as ways to pull some of that resource, even though it's not supposed to be there, pull that resource into the general fund, specifically for the working families tax credit program. Again, both of those two things are resources that were pushed into the transportation budget and helped fund the transportation package that we were in last session. We're going to do everything we can to, make sure that we stay whole. And I know the transportation legislators do not want these things to happen and are going to fight any of those changes. I'm just saying that that's one of the dynamics that we are navigating here in Olympia that's unique to this year.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
Brad, again, we've committed Kiewit to 1B. We've funded them.
Mhm.
So if somebody starts snooping around trying to take funds away from us, we've got the money committed. Now,
Yeah.
not all of it, but a good chunk of it, we're moving out. So if they pull that money back, there goes our schedule, there goes the cost. Here we go again.
And we're going to be meeting with policymakers and articulating that.
Good.
And ideally, I don't want to be too alarmist here, folks, but I'm also want to flag these. These are things that we are monitoring closely and directly engaging in because they are things that we are having to navigate here in Washington. I think the third wild card out there, and you guys were talking about it earlier, but that is the growing hostility between the state and feds. And we've all kind of seen some of the sort of wild cards that seem to emerge out of those those circumstances. I have not heard of anything specifically within transportation and all and infrastructure spending. What I am saying is that if you listen to, all of these legislative um, kind of speeches that are going on in this early stage of session, there just is an enormous amount of finger pointing and everything else at each other back and forth. And does that sort of rhetoric and whatever may or may not happen start to impact um, all of these kinds of things? Again, I don't want to overly freak people out. These are just some things that we are working to navigate and make sure that we stay absolutely solid. And as of right now, we are solid. So we're going to do everything we can to keep it that way. But I do want to flag these things because these are sort of my early warning light things that we keep an eye on and tend to create some concerns. Again, the good news is I'm not hearing anything, and I'm certainly not hearing anything unique to our project. But considering, kind of what we've been through over the years, I want to make sure that that you're aware of some of these things so no one gets surprised if or when we have to go into um, very strong defense mode.
Thank you.
I'll stop there. And if you have any questions, answer those. And then I'll stay on while Dan's talking in case we bleed over into each other.
Brad, do you see any value for having a contingent from the Bridge Authority come up and talk to legislators during the short session?
Yes, I don't think that that's a bad idea. What I want to be, I I think it is. I want to set up a regular cadence of kind of updates to the legislature, no matter what, whether it's in person or in some other way, just to make sure that they are um, aware of the progress. And part of the thing that we've been very successful at and have over the time is this: we have been progressing. We have been moving forward. The ball is going down the field. And I want to keep reinforcing that as a concept and as a reality for them. And so um yes, I think at least legislative leaders. I have not heard, and maybe I just haven't caught up to it. Is there any kind of a regional engagement in Olympia? We've done the gorgeous nights and things like that. I don't know if there's any programmatic things where we can dovetail onto. Either way, it's probably valuable to make sure that we do some updating of policymakers here.
I personally like that idea because we've made really good progress the last year, but even right now, we can show people that working with Kiewit, we're optimizing the design and we're driving costs out of our bridge. We're being very proactive on that, and I think that's a good news story that could certainly help protect us.
I think the question there would be a matter of timing.
Yeah, if I was to and I'll work with Dan and whoever else also. If I was to target, I would say the back half of February.
Okay.
And my thought would be is we had some invitees to our event in Hood River that weren't able to make it. And so getting some one-on-one time with them to kind of give our thanks for everything wouldn't be a bad idea.
So the point I was trying to make is that if they're in a discussion about moving money around, cutting money, whatever, and the bridge hasn't even come up in that discussion, having us show up to talk about the bridge may not be the best thing to do. Right?
Yeah, I get that.
We rely on
Again,
these guys.
we wouldn't have a defensive message on the ground in Olympia. We would be nothing but kind of positive in all the proactive and progress we've made. We would certainly focus on that. And just know that, again, while I was maybe a little alarmist in my earlier comments, that's more just things we're keeping an eye on. That's not our public facing stance in anything.
Thank you, Brad.
Dan, how's things going on the Oregon side?
So, like Brad, we're all looking at tea leaves, trying to understand what's about to come. The difference is we have another 25 days before we kick it off. We're in a shorter session. Our goes for about 35 days, and the budget situation is not of the magnitude that it is in Washington this year. And there has been a bit of a tension about how much to cut now. Right now, the forecast would show that you need to cut somewhere between 50 and 100 million to balance a budget, generally. But the numbers that are coming because of Medicaid show cuts of billions over 3 bienniums. So that there is this notion that if you cut early, you can even that out and not have us cut as much later, more broadly. So that's the budget discussion, and so it's viewed as a very austere time. We're hearing about $300 million in cuts that's being proposed, more generally, and so it is an environment where folks are looking in lots of different places, both for cuts and for change here and there to help balance the budgets. And in that kind of environment, you're just always remain vigilant in that. The other big issue that's going on in Oregon that it was alluded to earlier, which is the referral of a portion of the transportation package has qualified for the ballot in Oregon. And I think there was a fair amount of momentum in that effort, and a lot of concern that if that were successful, it would impact funding at a point where it would be hard to recover from. And so the governor just recently came out and made an announcement that really had three different elements to it. The first is that she was going to redirect as much funding and ask the agency to redirect as much funding, the legislature redirect as much funding as possible towards operations and maintenance to overcome the budget gap that a successful referral or repeal of that ballot measure would cause at ODOT. And so that's what they're calling the redirect. And so there is going to be an effort in the session likely to pass an ODOT budget that assumes that the transportation package, the small one that passed in the special session, does not actually materialize. The second effort that the governor announced is actually endorsing a repeal of that package, and that's more comprehensive than what was on the ballot. She's calling for complete repeal. There were some elements of that package that actually had some support in a variety of different places. The initiative effort was not a wholesale repeal. It was more of a selective repeal. The governor's recommendation is fully repealing it. And that would require a budget, obviously, for ODOT that anticipates that. And then finally, she announced that she's going to be kicking off discussions about developing a transportation package to replace what is either repealed or potentially referred to the voters in the 2027 session. And so there is an ongoing discussion around that. Again, as was noted earlier, our funding is actually not through the transportation package. And so we're not directly implicated in a repeal or an attempt around rebuilding that in a short session. With this caveat, and I've mentioned it before, which is ODOT is going through and will go through significant budget cuts around in their ability to continue to operate efficiently. All of the responsiveness questions that you were describing earlier, I just think we all have to view that as threatened in an environment where there's a cuts environment and they're having to move dollars around just to keep snowplows on the road, et cetera. And so while it is not directly implicating us, I do think ODOT as a partner, being able to continue to partner with us ongoing ways is just something that we have to continue to work with them on. And any kind of budget cut in that light, just we have to be cognizant of and watch. And so that's really on the issues that you generally care about. Where we are landing, I will say there is a general consensus that the project-oriented funding in lottery is a place to drive economic growth and economic development. And so it is not that it is somehow safe generally broadly from cutting, but it is viewed by a lot of the budget writers as places that you would not make cuts because you're trying to see the economic impact of those investments in the lottery of which we are funded. But we are and remain vigilant around it. I'll anticipate the question about coming to Salem. 35 days is a very short period of time. And at this point, my advice is not to plan a trip, to be ready to go if we need to. We will and continue to keep folks apprised of the progress the project is making. But there is, it is often viewed as you just don't want when folks have a very fast timeline on sort of doing meetings to keep people updated when you can do it a different way it can not necessarily endear you to them. That being said, I'll be as quick as anyone on here to suggest that you come if we begin looking into and seeing a threatening situation where it's important for you to be there. So that's
the package that we do for Washington would be an easy one to modify to use with Oregon if you see the need.
Great. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's where we are in Oregon.
Thank you. How about from DC? Can't see who's on.
I saw Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
Yes, sorry, I'm actually up on Capitol Hill, so I apologize, and I actually just got kicked out and jumped in just back right in time. Yeah, I wish we had some of the same situations that the state have in one regard, and that's they have kind of firm deadlines for when they're in session. They're just coming back here for the second session of 119 Congress, ramping up, but they're still working on last year's budget. The good news, for the most part, they seem to be moving forward. We expect transportation will be they're doing these in packages. It'll be in the last package. That doesn't necessarily impact us at all. We don't have any CDS funding that's included in there, and all the BIP funding that.
You dropped off, Jim.
The phone at once.
Yeah, if he comes back, we'll come back to him. Hey, Carrie, I see you're on any G2 on our BIP you're hearing?
Hold on here, trying to figure out how to turn my camera on. There we go.
There you go.
No word at all. We had heard late in December that there was something floating around about the 2025 BIP, that there was apparently a list of some kind, and that we might hear something soon after the first of the year. We have not yet, but I am in contact with our people in DC, and I'm again confident that we will hear as soon as something breaks, but not hearing anything.
Yep, I'm sorry,
Thanks,
I'm
Carrie.
having
Yeah,
technical
Jim,
issues here. No, sorry, I'm having technical issues.
We got you now. We had you.
Okay, let's move forward. How about partner updates? Federal Highways, ODOT, WashDOT? Anybody would like to give an update? Rob?
I don't have anything other than that I signed off on your invoice.
Hey, and we very much appreciate that. Do you have anybody else? No. Okay, let's go on to the consent agenda. We have invoice approvals. I do have one question when we're looking at it. If we can turn to page 16 real quick. Tehi, Bell Ventures, it looks like we've got an October invoice for the rent and a January invoice. Have we already paid December?
They kind of scatter around. Sometimes they send the invoice too late. So it is just because they don't really on the clock every month. So I cannot confirm if we paid the December, but I think we did. Yeah. But the October invoice isn't there because they haven't sent it to us, and now they sent it, not because we didn't pay.
Okay, so the October invoice, as an example, when did we receive it?
We have to check.
Okay, it's not on this list here.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, it's not there.
So we're not holding anything.
No, we're not.
Process it as soon as we get.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
Yes, sir.
They missed a month and.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's all I had. Could we have a motion to approve the invoice list that we have here? Now, these invoices have been reviewed
by ENC committee and then funding and finance committee.
Chair, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do you have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, opposed? Okay, motion passes. We can go pay these invoices. Committee reports, funding and finance. Grant?
Yep, thanks. A bunch of the items that we talked about have been discussed before. Something in addition that was discussed is the idea of if we were to transfer the bridge to any DOT ownership in the future. One thing that ConOps would be evaluating is the idea of reciprocity, integrating any tolling system with Oregon, Washington, any other states' systems. And so that idea is something that ConOps is going to be evaluating. And they'll have to evaluate that in order to effectuate any sort of transfer to any sort of BOT function and to integrate with their systems. The financial team is working on the project financial plan, which is a requirement for all large financial or large federally funded projects. That is due at the end of the month. And the draft come back to us and then go out by 31st. One other thing to flag for us is that our interim financial director reminded us that at some point the port may get busy, and we should consider at some point, or at least have plans for when that day comes, if we need to have our own financial director or similar in-house. So we as an authority can do that. We can assign it to a subcommittee. We can put together a job description or whatever we as a group deem appropriate.
We know we're getting billed by the port for that position. Do we know what percentage of an FTE we're getting billed for?
Well, be careful because it's more than the one position. You've got a couple of technicians that are also charging us for.
I'm talking about just this position.
Okay.
What percent?
Yeah, I don't have that information off.
Sure.
Like we can get that information. I don't have it offhand.
I would suggest we consider that we don't do anything with this until we're fully funded. When we're fully funded, then it's probably time to pull the trigger to really look at this hard. And we're definitely going to have an ED in place or executive director before we notice to proceed on construction.
Sure.
The other ED.
I like your carefulness about acronyms. I appreciate that.
Okay. If we go that route, just regarding timing, if we don't hear on BIP in the meantime, but if things change at the port, timeline wise, it may be prudent for us to have at least some of that homework done in advance or some contingency in place in advance.
I don't think it hurts us to do the homework and figure out what do you want this thing to look like.
We don't need to pull the trigger.
Right.
We don't need to go forward with it. Right. But should the port make any decisions that affect us, and we've been assured that we would receive plenty of notice about this. Mm-hmm. It would be prudent to have those sort of plans at least in place at some level.
Was that consensus to have the finance committee do that?
That's up to all of us.
I would suggest that the finance committee look at the finance piece of it, and the governance committee, which I think is already kind of looking at it, is for the executive director. And then maybe the governance as well, take a look at an overall structure. You know, if it takes us 2 or 3 or 4 years of operations before one of the states would take it, we're going to have to operate it for a little while.
There's kind of two conditions. One is we use the full funding as the trigger. The other is we don't know about full funding and the port is the trigger.
Yeah.
And there's probably two separate approaches that we might want to look at, because as soon as if the port comes first and then BIP comes 6 months later, then there's an interim step there that leads you to a more permanent solution.
Good point.
So I think I'm missing something. So what is triggering this discussion? The port is thinking that Debbie's workload is growing too much. Oh, there's Debbie. Okay.
I thought maybe I'd just jump in here. So it's just it's not that it's imminent that that my workload has gotten too busy. It's just that I can foresee where I could be saying that. So I think what we talked about at the Funding and Finance Committee meeting was, and what I would recommend is that you move forward with looking at some contractors that could come in. There are contractors that could come in and fill this for you. It's definitely not a full-time job at this point, definitely not. And so I wouldn't recommend right now putting together like a job description and even going down that path just yet. I mean, it's something that you would probably need in the future, and especially as you just said, if you had to run the bridge for a while before you could hand it off to someone else, you would need someone, right, to be able to handle these things. But there are a number of contractors out there, and I also think this is such an interesting project that you wouldn't have too much trouble either finding someone. Capacity can be a challenge. We actually have a contractor that helps us out here at the port, and he's always too busy to take on any additional projects. And I understand that because that's exactly the role I filled before I came here at the port. I was a contractor, and I always had more requests for help than what I could fulfill. So, but I think my recommendation at this point, and kind of where Grant was going with this, is that we start to pull together some information on some contractors that could fill in the interim if my workload does get too busy. Because as Commissioner Fox pointed out, it isn't just me. We have other employees here that help out as well, that have lower billing rates. And so I think it'd be, but again, I think you could find a contractor that could also have that range of abilities to be able to come in and do that. So I think it would just be, I think it'd be a good idea to have that anyway. I mean, even just as an insurance policy, because if something suddenly happened to myself or to Yana, who's my assistant, or to even to some of our front office people, we would suddenly be in a situation where we might not be able to stay on top of things. And so I think just putting together a list of people that could potentially come in and fill these roles would be a valid thing to do at this point.
So do we all agree that should be an action for funding and finance and governance to start working on?
Yeah, I mean, so knowing what the process is, all being familiar with what the process would be if we're being asked to pull the trigger, I think totally makes sense. On the executive director discussion, I'm just struggling to recall exactly how we left it, but we talked about job description. But in terms of actually, there's no reasonable path to get people to apply for a job without the funding lined up. So there's no meaningful discussion to happen on that part. So the two of them are different.
They're different, but the only thing I think you could really do now, if you haven't already done it, is start thinking about what roles do you want this executive director to be responsible for.
We had that discussion,
especially in construction.
Didn't we?
I thought we've got the draft and everything ready to go for the executive director. We're just holding off on it.
I'm just trying to remember what the draft says, but I remember there being a document. I just don't remember what it says.
And we're in good shape there.
That was
just looking at the finance side, right?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, so we could evaluate contract and base the descriptor as job description is just a scope. So we could take that on and add to our other plate of things. Okay.
About the engineering construction committee.
Oh, sorry. I got sidetracked here. I do have some notes. We've addressed a number of the items. So we spent a fair amount of time talking superficially about the tolling and bringing that forward so that we can get a little more detailed discussion. I think that's why tolling is here this week to get some baseline so we can start that. We reviewed escalation again. There is some updated information from late last fall where we had aging information. Steel is one that's bouncing around reasonably. It seems to be bouncing less, so maybe it's stabilizing. We don't have enough data to really know that, but that was encouraging. Concrete has a huge jump for some reason, which we don't really have an explanation for at this point. Fuels have dropped and labor's kind of static. I think we're looking at the data at more frequency than you're really going to see updates on the labor.
And one of the things on the concrete, we asked that Drew go back and all of this data came out of the Engineering News Record indices, which is a kind of a standard index in the construction industry. But we've asked him to go back and see if he can't pull out West Coast, Northwest
If we can narrow it
region
down.
and see if it says a different story.
Yep. Took a look at the QUIP 5-week design schedule and had a pretty good discussion on that. We're getting a design schedule, but it's not really helping us tie back to the master schedule. So we've asked staff and QUIP to do a little bit more work on that so we can really understand where we are before we get to the end and realize we're not done. So that's kind of an ongoing.
Yeah, so kind of amplify that a little bit. Our concern is you have these 5-week schedules with a bunch of stuff on it. How do you know you're working on the right stuff that supports the master schedule? Because there's no easy tie between the two. And more importantly, is there work in the master schedule that is not getting done?
It's going to bite us later.
And why not? So we've asked for additional input on that.
I think the conclusion is that the information is there. We're just not able to really see it and understand it from what we're getting. So that'll be an ongoing discussion. We talked about the IGA, which is later in this in our agenda. And also the property 17, which is later in the agenda. So we'll just let that go. And then I think we ran out of time, but we were just kind of getting to a point of an update from Christy. And I think she had to go just kind of on where we are on the biological opinion update and some of that sort of thing. And that was kind of where we left off.
Yeah, that'll be coming back to you. There'll be a pretty extensive, I'll say, environmental update at the next board meeting. Okay. And engineering committee meeting as well. More there probably than here, but all right.
Catherine, was there anything else that I missed?
No, I apologize for my tardiness. You started by saying a lot of the stuff was already covered, so I'm going to assume that to be true. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to communications, government relations, Dan. Or actually, I'm sorry, Jake.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I'll start with the ROD event. It was a good event at Lightwell Hotel. A lot of support from the legislators and elected officials. Communications group submitted information about the ROD on Instagram and Facebook, which included Spanish content. That information, those posts garnered over 24,000 views. So that's a big number for us. The communications team is cultivating ROD photos and information, and we'll put that into the next newsletter as well as use it for updating our website. Next topic was the new bridge renderings. As you may have well seen, there's been a few renderings used in recent social media posts. The comms team is working on cleaning up and producing some additional renderings. We've discussed potentially taking our top 3 to 5 renderings and transferring them onto foam boards and have those available for future events or presentations. Going to presentations and media outreach, the comms team has updated our official slide deck that is used for presentations. This has already been used by Commissioner Anderson and Mike Shannon at recent events. We added Spanish language information into those slide decks. On the presentation side, Mike Shannon will be presenting to Hood River City Council tonight. Good luck, Mike. We've been asked to do a presentation to Hood River's May Street third graders again. This was done last year, so we're going to try and make that happen again. We also been a request to do a presentation to Washington DOT in March, and we're looking at doing a presentation to Friends of the Gorge, as well as some other nonprofits here in early 2026. We are still focused on earned media and partnering with media outlets. Mike Shannon did a great job recently with a KATU, KUNP interview. And a part of our media outreach is we will be transitioning our communications approach now that we are in the sort of design phase, and we'll be focused on developing stories or narratives related to our design work here in the next year. Finally, some website updates. Completing a website refresh is now, I feel, our highest priority for the comms team. These updates would include things like the homepage, how folks navigate through the website, and the multimedia information, photos and videos that we put on our website. Our goal is to present an updated website to the board at the February 23rd meeting, and then work after getting you guys' feedback, work on towards a public release shortly afterwards. Let me know if there's any questions about any of that information I presented.
Hey, Jake, two items for you. I know we're working with the unions and the local high schools to put on some kind of a talk. And I think that's in the January, early February timeframe.
Yeah, Brianna's in contact with, I think, 4 of the local schools about kind of moving down the road based on what their STEM folks.
Well, it's not only STEM, it's really getting them interested in craft, manual labor.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other one, maybe think about a news article that we've worked now with both counties, and we've got commissioners that have been reappointed, and just making that aware to everybody.
Yeah,
maybe something you want to do.
Yeah, we're gonna, well, as we're gonna discuss later about updating our board photo, refreshing information about all the board members as part of the website update. But yes, thank you.
Okay.
You can just use AI to age all of us.
Make them younger.
Yeah. I've got a couple of issues. First of all, who is doing the presentation to May Street?
So
I'm just kidding. I have to say, I've done presentations to the entire student body at May Street. I've never been more terrified in my life. I don't know why, but for some reason, having a room full of kids is terrifying. But they are so well managed and well behaved. Oh yeah, the staff there is so good. It's not at all.
Last year it was It was a lot of fun.
So don't worry about it if you are doing it. Number 2, we have here in the room, we have this cross section of the bridge. I'm wondering if there's a plan to update that cross-section diagram, because I think that's one of the things that gets a lot of discussion. And I just noticed that the cars and trucks are going the same direction on that. Yeah.
It's an emergency.
It's going to alternate directions.
Oh, okay, so that's how it's going to work. So that's great. So I would appreciate seeing an update on that. And then final issue, I want to say this really carefully, because I have no intention of bashing on another project. There was a podcast that I listened to yesterday that was Bike Portland. So Jonathan Mass and an economist talking about IBR, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. And I think it's extremely instructive to see how what they identify as the failures of communication and the failures of management in that project. And this is obviously highly editorial content, but I think that in listening to their discussion, it would help us make sure that we avoid some of the perceptions that they describe in this piece. It's about a 20-30 minute piece. I think it just came out yesterday or the day before, and it also includes a discussion of construction indices, which I thought was interesting because it didn't match the data that we've been hearing. So this is an economist who's making some assertions, and I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but it is very instructive, and I encourage you to listen to the podcast. It's actually on YouTube. You can see.
Say it one more time.
Podcast, but there's lots of
Bike Portland. If you go to Bike Portland, Bike Portland's a an advocacy journalism organization. Jonathan Mass is the executive editor there, and he is the person doing the interview with this economist whose name I've forgotten. I'm sure you can get to it right from their website, or if not, I can send you the YouTube version of it.
Anything else?
No, I would love to listen to that podcast. One other thing.
I'll send you the contact.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Why don't you send it to all of us? There's been a lot of news articles that we've passed around about what's going on down there.
Yeah, this is not really for information on what's going on down there, but to see kind of how people are reacting to that. And they have a rather lengthy discussion about the failure to identify the price increases.
Yeah, these articles, the same thing.
Relevant to us, right?
Yeah.
And it's just,
it's an alternate perspective.
But it's well done.
Clearly, one group thought what they were doing was fine, and another perspective from another group.
Right. I think that these are respected people commenting on this, and therefore it's not just junk journalism. It's real journalism. It's worth understanding.
One last thing. One thing we discussed at the comms meeting was we're looking at, or the Bridge Authority is looking at sponsoring some internships with some local schools. I wasn't sure if that was different than what you were referring to, Chair Fox, or is that?
Yeah, what I'm thinking of is that a couple of years ago, we started discussions with the local unions out of Portland area, talking about how do you attract high school kids into the craft, into the professional craft. And these unions have apprentice programs and training programs, and how do we connect the two together? Because there's a critical shortage of trained craft, not only in the Northwest, but all over the United States. And we've had numerous discussions with the unions. I personally met with the principal over at a high school in Hood River. He's very excited about getting something like this going for his juniors and seniors. It's great that we got a hold of the third graders, but they're not going to help us on this project, I hope.
Maybe on the IBR project. Maybe on the IBR project.
Yeah.
You brought it up.
I was very careful. I didn't step in when you stepped in.
Okay, so that's the craft side. The apprentice program we're talking about is perhaps HNTB bringing on a summer hire, which I've done in my career on every project all over, and it's really, really good for young people to kind of get a taste of this kind of work. And frankly, it's really good that they bring fresh ideas, fresh perspectives to an organization, and it's kind of surprising sometimes what they can do with not knowing how to do it. Bringing a new perspective to you.
Well, they know AI better than we do.
Absolutely.
Somebody who's had to run an internship program and start one, is there, before we sort of throw this out as this might be happening, do we have a curriculum that they'll be following so it would be beneficial, mutually beneficial? I would hate to create work for HNTB to create a program as opposed to,
They
that's
already have one.
Yeah.
that's a lot of man hours to create an internship program. Just want to be cautious as to what we're adding to people's plate before we, start saying this, just be careful. Over.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Next item is action items. Mike, you want to run this piece of it?
Sure. So the first action item is, as we talked about earlier, both the counties have reappointed the commissioners to the Bridge Authority. So the next step is for the Bridge Authority to consider action to appoint your co-chairs. Just a reminder, that's for 2 years. The first co-chair and second co-chair, and they alternate at the end of the first year. So this would be for 2026 and 2027. All the backup stuff out of your bylaws and everything is in there. I would like you to take a look at, there's a list of activities. Just to quickly hit on some of those, just to take into consideration when you're thinking about who's involved. In 2026, we're looking at completing the 60% design, which will include a schedule update, an estimate update, and a cost schedule risk analysis with FHWA. A number of design decisions and scope change clarifications as we move towards that 60%. We're still in that design development stage. As we talked about, some potential early land acquisitions, travel MOAs, as well as audits will be coming in this next year. And then looking out in 2027, looking at finishing the design, doing the procurement for a contractor, finishing up the permits, finishing up land acquisitions, and then both years we'll be looking at grant awards and grant agreements. So a lot of activities over the next 2 years. So it's going to be a busy couple of years. So just something to consider for those who may want to be involved as co-chairs. But you all have some discussion whether you want to take up for now or do something like.
I read the bylaws. I didn't see anything in there that actually precluded re-electing the existing co-chairs.
I didn't either.
But so I want to talk about that. Yeah. So first of all, when I first read the packet, it's kind of ambiguous as to what you're saying in your. It seems like you're proposing that we reappoint the co-chairs.
That was not the intent.
That's not your intent.
No, the intent was just simply for you all to have a discussion. This is your first meeting, so you're supposed to have a discussion about co-chairs, whether you make that decision at this meeting or just have a discussion and decide something different. It was just simply to give you guys an open forum to talk about it.
Okay. So from a governance point of view, I spent a fair amount of time thinking about how things like this work. And so let me start by saying I think that our current co-chairs are doing a fantastic job and have no reservations at all about their abilities and skills in performing that task. The question that I see is that if we reappoint the same co-chairs, we're starting a pattern, which is saying that co-chairs serve for a long period of time. Is that your inspiration? Yeah. The co-chairs serve for a long period of time. And we're also, so our current co-chairs have worked incredibly hard and have set a tone that it's more than a policy board. That they're getting their hands dirty, they're deeply involved in everything, and reappointing them kind of affirms that. And I'm wondering, or I'm suggesting that path to consider would be the path of making it common and normal that the co-chairs rotate. And we're immediately going to run into the fact that no one's going to do it because of all the work that's involved in it. And therefore affirming that the co-chairs are running meetings, they're signatories to the documents that need to be signed. They represent the board, but they're not extra powerful in terms of being board members. So I think we should have a discussion about all of this. And I'm also feeling like it probably is not a reasonable thing for us to resolve today if there's any interest in discussing. If everyone says I'm crazy, then I guess we're done. But if people want to discuss this, I would suggest that we consider a motion to extend the co-chairs until such time as we replace them, and then have some reasonable discussion about how we feel about this. I started by thinking, "Oh, that's great. Let's just reappoint them." And that's, we're setting a pattern which may not be the best pattern to set, and we should talk about it. I realize none of you have had that opportunity to go through that whole exercise. Yeah,
I did. My process wasn't too different than what you've just described. Well, just thinking that, what we've been doing so far has worked really well.
Yeah.
I think our two co-chairs represent in-depth knowledge in both the construction and the government side, which is critical at this point in the project. And it won't always be the critical thing. So I did that. I had the same conclusion as I went through the list of all the things in realizing, well, if it's someone else, Mike is still going to do that.
Right.
If someone else is running the meetings and that sort of, Mike's still going to be the point person that everybody's going to go to ask about this contractual stuff on the progressive build, or Jake's going to be there when we need to understand something about what's going on in the state of Washington or something. So doing that mental exercise started to say, okay, so maybe it's just something when you're on the board that, there is, you give everybody a break and you take your hit for your year, right, and you run the meeting and whatever additional time that is. But everybody still continues to have their role and you're just running the meeting and whatever extra thing. So I kind of came to the same conclusion you did, and it was actually the way you put the package together that let me, what everybody's term was, what our bylaws said, and then what the tasks are. And just even in that order, it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, so this isn't, it's a shift. It's not a big deal. We still have the skill sets and everybody's going to do what their strongest skill set is. And I firmly believe that's what's made us as successful as we have been. So.
Yeah, the thing I would add to that discussion is, I know when I considered whether I wanted to run for chair of our county board of commissioners, and I very quickly determined that the role of chair in running a meeting kind of makes it harder for you to participate in the debate and gives you less time. You're moderating the debate, so participation becomes more awkward. And so I chose to stay as a commissioner in order to be in a position to be more active in those debates. And I'm also wondering if not having to spend the time preparing agendas and preparing meetings might be a welcome.
I give you my input. I've been chair or co-chair now for almost 4 years with the bi-state working group. Okay. So I don't have a burning desire to do it some more, number one. Number two, I agree totally with what you're saying. If I'm not a chair or a co-chair, that's not going to stop me from sticking my nose into stuff. You probably have already figured out.
Which is good.
And as far as running the meeting, I think we've got it down where it's not that big of a deal. And fortunately, or unfortunately, I'm one of the few in the room that being retired, I've got time. So thus far, I've enjoyed the heck out of the involvement and so on. Now, the other thing to consider, even though the house didn't sell, the house is going back on the market in April. Now, it may not sell this year, but if it does, then I'm going to be scrambling and we're going to have to do something. So it may make sense to assign these next 2 years to somebody different. And I have a nomination if anybody's interested.
Well, we can talk about that. I mean, I guess.
Let's make sure we have the process.
Yeah.
I add one more piece to what Eric said. I don't want to do it, but it would be the more time we spend allowing it to be such a burden, which kind of is right now, the more impossible we make it to find anyone. When you do move, for example, to find someone to replace you. And right now it would be one of the two of us who have to replace you. So I'm suggesting that if we make it more a matter of force, that this time it's his turn, then next time it's my turn, or something like that. The more routine the changing is, the easier it will be to get a commissioner to sign on to it. So I just add that. And I'm also I am going to reinforce that I don't think we should decide this today. I think we should let that sink in and see if anyone comes up with additional points of discussion.
I would just mention, where I thought you were originally going with this was going to be, sounds like we needed an executive director.
That's hard, right?
I mean, because there are roles and positions that have to occur within an organization, and an executive director would usually assume most of those roles. We don't have that, so we've all been acting in more an executive function than strictly legislative, where we usually would be. And that's great because it's allowed us to be really nimble as an organization, as a board. It's probably driven Mike mad because, he doesn't have one person he's working with. He's working with the whole board. And we've also been putting a lot of those executive director role positions onto Mike. And that's just the fact of the matter. I'm fine with pushing it off to another meeting. I think the roles are going to continue to change as the organization changes. If we get the funding, next month, or we'll find out later this month, we're going to be having a completely different conversation next month about hiring an executive director, what that role is going to be for the chair and the co-chair. Right now, you look at who's because running the meeting is one thing. It's not that big of a deal. A lot of that stuff on the outside is the conversation about where we're at, where we're going, and all that Mike and I always have as the chairs.
Right.
But so much of what we do happens at the committee level.
Right.
I mean, that's really where the rubber meets the road. And it's the trust that we all have for one another as when I was chair, I trust you guys explicitly in your committees that what you bring us is what we need, and that's what we're doing. And the meeting runs efficiently, effectively, and it's bam, bam, bam.
One of the major chair roles, though, is to make sure that the committees don't overstep and that we don't illegally decide things in committees, right?
Absolutely.
I know you guys spend time on that, right? So I just want to surface that also.
I think one last point, when you take a look at those goals or milestones for the next 2 years, there's a lot of stuff on there that's kind of hidden that is going to require us to go like this, or we're going to lose a lot of money and a lot of effort. So we've got to, however we do this, what it's going to look like to get construction started versus a year or two into construction is much different. Once you're into construction and you're really rocking, our stress level should go down. But between now and then, getting that deal in place, it's going to be crazy.
They're all umbrella tasks.
With them,
they're all big scopes of work under an umbrella. There's only 12 items there, but 13 items.
To do that right, I got to tell you, if we're really going to make this thing work, this meeting right here is very important. It can't, and I know you don't mean this, but it can't be short, sweet, crisp, out. We got to talk about these issues because they're so far-ranging and going to have big implications. We're not talking little, but big implications of how our bridge goes together. So the next 2 years, it's going to be a fun ride. It's going to be really challenging. And especially next month, if we get full funding this month, Katie, bar the door, we're going fast, watch out.
Not gonna get any sleep is what's
It'll be fun.
I'm doing my best to make sure your house is a smell. Nuclear waste.
I think we as commissioners all understand the workload and what's expected of us as commissioners if any of us take this role on, especially now until we receive full funding and have an executive director or anything like that. We understood what those expectations were coming into this position.
Hopefully.
I believe everybody should have had that expectation or understanding coming into it. So from what we've done over the last couple of years with our current chairs, we understand the level of commitment and work that we would expect any new chair to be taking on in this role. I don't think we're necessarily blind to that expectation.
So how do you guys want to proceed? Do you want to think about it for a meeting session and then come back next meeting and have a working session on this?
Can I give you one other thing to think about if you're going to think about it? And that is that you think about this, your co-chairs change the committees that they would be on, or would you change your committees if you change your co-chairs at all? Or is that linked at all? I don't think it is, but just something to think about. And maybe then even second to that is everybody happy with the committees? And do you want to do both of those things at once where you talk about the committees and talk about your co-chairs?
Yeah, on that, just on the second question, I pointed out that, my committee doesn't have much to do, right? The committees are very busy. So we certainly could discuss load leveling might be a reasonable thing to do, but or I don't have a problem not having a lot to do, but that's I just want to be fair about pointing that out.
Well, let's maybe talk about that for just a second going forward. A huge effort that's going to be coming at us, assuming that we get funding, is a negotiation with Kiewit on a construction contract. That could be a significant chunk of work for either funding and finance, engineering, or you guys. And maybe what you do is you take one member from each and go figure this out, because it's not going to be easy and has wide range, long range, ramifications.
Thank you. That's what I was going to point out.
Yeah, Catherine, hand up.
Yes, sir. Just quick question. The only options for who the chairs can be for Oregon would be Mike Fox, Arthur, and Grant. And the only options for Washington would be the current commissioners, correct?
Actually, I'm going to ask you, have you reviewed the bylaws to be sure that the chair has to be a commissioner?
That's the way I was just reading it and actually had that same thought. And if you read bullet A, it says the board shall appoint 2 co-chairs from a 2-year term as follows. 1 co-chair from among the commissioners residing in Washington and 1 co-chair from the commissioners residing in Oregon. So,
but the term
by the definition of commissioner, that's the only voting ones. Others are alternates. Would be why I would limit it to that. But I had the same thought and was.
Did they say alternate commissioner?
No, it just says commissioner.
But the point is, if we thought there was a good reason to change that, we could also propose that
change
change.
that.
But
Yes.
Catherine, are you do you want to expand upon why you're asking that question? Do you have an idea?
Well, yes, sir. Because I think I not to pull the 6 people that can vote, because again, 6 of us cannot vote. We had this information. We know this decision was coming. I just wonder why we would push it to another meeting, just because we have a lot of decisions on the table. And if that is the way that this board wants to continue, I think it's going to get harder the more meetings we have down the road. We have had this information. This is a known thing that was coming to us. We've been talking about this since July of 25. And so not to kind of, we knew that this was coming. This is not a surprise that we're voting for this. And I'd urge us, if it's one of 3 of the 3 of us from Oregon and it's one of the 3 from Washington, we do know the amount of work and we have been doing this. And so I just urge us to consider voting this meeting as opposed to pushing it, because next meeting, if we're having to talk about executive director and again, a shuffle. I just think there's a lot on that agenda already. And I urge us to potentially make a decision, or at least, strongly consider voting this meeting over.
Sorry, Executive Director, next meeting, where did that come from?
If we get full funding this month.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what she was saying.
Like hyperbole. I mean, we just talking about all these things.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Just feel like we're now adding hyperbole and also actual items. It's going to be a very long Q1 for our board.
So I'll be clear. I did not speak to any other commissioners about this because I didn't want to create an illegal meeting. And so while I've known this is coming up, the question of whether anyone's like, I don't know if Grant is willing to do it. I don't know if Eric or Doug are willing to do it. So I haven't had those discussions, and I think we can still have those discussions right this minute, or we can give people time to sleep on it and to come forward with some consideration.
So as we're thinking about that, I kind of like the idea, if we had to change our document that says you don't have to be a commissioner. You could be an alternate commissioner and be a chair or a co-chair.
You may just want to pause and let legal
Yeah.
give you 100% answer.
I thought about the same things last night. I was kind of wondering, what might the negatives be? Signing authority. Is there some legal question as to whether signing authority can be delegated to someone who's not a commissioner?
Yeah.
And I don't know that.
And I looked at this, I hadn't thought of it in that restricted terms. I thought of it as a group of 11.
Right.
That we were.
Yeah. No, language has to be precise.
I guess I just didn't read it closely enough.
Yeah.
So I mean, unless Mark is prepared to give us an answer right now, that may be a question by itself that says we need to delay this. And that was a hint, Mark.
Yeah. I think I'm on mute, but I will take a look at it.
Right.
It sounds like we'll follow up with legal and then bring you back something at the next meeting, and everybody can consider their voting.
Okay, so do you want the current chair's current position to extend for 2 weeks?
I would make a motion that we extend the terms of the current chair and co-chair until this body takes action to replace them.
Okay, so then the next question would be, do you want Jake, since it's the new year, to be the first chair and I'll be the second chair? Which I don't really care, but I think we got to solve it because we've got some signatures coming up on it.
So my preference would be that you just continue in whatever position you were in December and until a replacement becomes effective. That's probably the cleanest and easiest.
Nice try getting out of it.
Sorry.
The only reason I'm not saying
they figured it out.
The only reason I'm not saying next meeting is just I make a separate motion to add to our agenda for next meeting discussion of this item. But that's
I would prefer that the motion be characterized as the current first chair and co-chair will continue in their position until they are replaced by a vote of the commission.
That's what I said.
There we go.
Okay, so that is my motion.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
So I would make a motion to add to our agenda for next meeting a discussion of appointment of chair and co-chair for the next 2 years.
And I will take a look at the whether an alternate can serve. But I think, as you pointed out, Commissioner Babbitts, even if they don't, then that change can be made. And I think that we're due next, if not next meeting, the next month, then for a review of whatever's in the parking lot for bylaw amendments.
Yeah, I guess my thinking is that that item that I brought up there, I'm sure that Catherine brought up about whether an alternate can serve is something I would put in the parking lot, and I would suggest that at the next meeting we choose someone from the voting commissioners and then have that discussion so that the next time in 2 years we might or might not consider someone who is the alternate.
I would suggest that you don't necessarily wait 2 years.
Yeah,
I
think
if
we're
we
due
get
for
the
a
call
bylaw.
done quickly, then we consider that at the next meeting, and if we all decide that's what we want to do, we can do it.
Yeah, we have some bylaw amendments in the parking lot that I think should probably go to the next governance committee meeting for discussion and review, and then presentation to the board if recommendations are made. So we can add that.
The reason I'm a little hesitant, Mark, is there anything in the CFA about this? Because if there is, then we would probably want to consult with CFA signatories on it.
Yeah, no. That would be part of the review. Absolutely.
Well, let's
Commission formation agreement. I'm sorry.
At the dollar, put $1.
No, that's great.
Okay, so we gotta act on your motion.
So my motion is to put on the agenda. Well, it hasn't been seconded yet, but
Second.
Let's make sure, because I think I heard two different
I want to make
ideas.
sure I get it clear. Right. Because there's one path by which we would say, let's discuss it. Let's appoint commissioners for the next, board chair and co-chair for the next 2 years at our next meeting. And there's another path by which we would say, let's receive the statement from legal and then discuss whether we want to make changes or what the path might be to make changes before we have that appointment process.
I think we can do both. I think we can do both. And if we decide that on the first one where Mark had said, hey, this is going to be too difficult, or we decide, no, we don't want to do that right now, and we go ahead with the second action, which is, anyway, we got to consider, are we going to go ahead and make a change on the chairs and vote? And off we go.
But the flip is, if he says,
I think that at this point, the cleanest motion would be to provide that the current first chair and second chair continue in their positions until they are replaced by the full commission.
Yeah, we've already did that.
Okay.
That's already underway.
I don't think you need a motion to put something in the parking lot.
No, I'm making an agenda item for next meeting to vote on chair and co-chair.
Yeah, I think
and you're just trying to figure out how big the slate is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
We don't need a motion for that. The chair can put that as an agenda.
Yeah, just put it on the agenda, and we will work with the governance committee to review what's in the parking lot for bylaws amendments and what they want to forward to the board.
The motion dies for lack of second.
Good. All right, let's keep going.
Okay, next. The next one on the list is the authorization to initiate right-of-way action on parcel 17. I'm gonna call it parcel C, map number 17, parcel 17, also known as O property.
On the Washington
side. With which one we're talking about? Okay. It is just the authorization for us to start that process because of the nature of progressive design build and this kind of phased approach to things. We need to just the authorization. Go get that.
And so this is the item that this is also related to the request that was made for Jake and myself to participate in.
This is when it's on the Washington side. It's the private property owner, and it's to go get a official full appraisal of that property so that we can bring that back to the full board for discussion. Probably an interim step is to bring it back to you and Jake and have a discussion prior to coming back to the full board. So it's just to start the appraisal process for that parcel on the Washington side.
Okay, so what it says here is to initiate right-of-way actions, and the action is the appraisal.
Yes.
Okay.
And it says that in the details.
Yeah, no, I looked at that quickly, and I'm just a little. I don't have a problem here. The issue is that we have not been fully trained in what we can and can't talk about. We've been warned that anything related to right-of-way, don't talk to anybody about anything. And now we have a motion to take action related to.
I read this differently. Okay, I read it that you want a motion to give you authority to go ahead and get an appraisal for that one particular piece of property on the Washington side.
That's what.
Has nothing to do with what you guys are doing over on the port side.
No, we were supposed for both sides though.
Yeah.
We're
Is it
not just
both sides?
Washington
Yeah.
side.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
it's
I stand corrected.
yeah, and it's not to do anything other than authorize us to get an appraisal.
Start the process.
Just to start the process on that parcel.
Okay, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next one.
Okay, the next one is the right-of-way action for two authorizations that the board needs to take. One is a right-of-way resolution and then a certificate of insurance. Basically, it's just saying you all will follow all of the Uniform Relocation Acts and federal requirements as you pursue your right-of-way. So you just need to take a formal motion that says you will follow the rules.
What we gotta do?
You don't have to, but it would be preferable if you did.
We get into a lot of trouble potentially.
It would.
Yeah. Hey, Jake, you have your hand up?
Or is that just the cursor?
No, I think that's
No,
actually.
I have a question. So when I was reading through some of these documents and thinking about right of ways, where my mind goes is that are we, because we're supposed to be in the design phase of the project, are we starting to bleed into, because we're talking about maybe purchasing or doing financial transactions related to right of way, are we starting to bleed into something beyond the design? And I guess my question is, what is the messaging, I guess, that we're promoting when we talk about our right of way work to the public?
So I'll jump in for a little bit of that. So in obtaining your record of decision that we got in November, that's what allows you to move forward. One of the first things that allows you to move forward into now starting to obtain right of way along with your final design. So these other documents are also steps in allowing you to move forward with right of way acquisitions. There's also the RAMP document, and I'll get the acronym in just a second. It's the Real Estate Acquisition Management Plan, which is also part of that. So there's a few different things you just have to acknowledge. You're going to follow the federal guidance and rules related to right-of-way, but you're allowed to start into final right-of-way process as soon as you get your record of decision.
So I think we keep talking about design. In reality, we're doing all the project prep. So it's design, right-of-way acquisition, permits, environmental mitigations, so that we're ready to put a shovel in the water.
Yes, they call it going to final design and being prepared for construction. And one of the documents, and we'll share it in the next meeting or two, is we're putting together kind of a checklist of all the things that you have to do prior to FHWA giving you notice to proceed to go to construction. So you have to have all your full funding. You've got to have a project management plan, a finance plan. You've got to have your right-of-way all secured. You've got to have utilities all done. So we'll get that put together so you all can review that as well. But there's a number of things. This is just getting the right-of-way process started. And there's a lot of steps to this. Every parcel will have to come back to the full board for you guys to take an action on each parcel. Some of them may be monetary, some of them may be IGAs with local agencies, so there'll be different things. But this just gets us started in that direction.
All of these are kind of long, linear processes.
They are too. I would
start them early.
Yeah, I was always told that right away, whether it was 100 parcels or one parcel, it's 2 years.
Has his hand up.
Oh, yeah. I just want to say that this is a very important part of the process. And I absolutely encourage commissioners to ask as many questions as you need to. It's not always a straightforward process. And as Mike indicated, this is a long-term project. And with this project, we're not expecting any drama, but it can be very complicated with landowners who are not in favor of your project. And we don't know who may be acquiring those parcels in the next year or two. So do keep an open mind, ask as many questions as you need to, because the federal government, in particular in this transaction, because it's not being led by a state Department of Transportation, is watching us pretty carefully. So we want to be squeaky clean and ask all the questions that you need to make sure that we can create a record that will justify our moving forward with the project. Thank you.
And Mark does have a member of his team that's a right-of-way specialist that's working with our right-of-way person. We will be briefing Jake and Arthur on every parcel transaction that we do, as well as ODOT is going to be taking a kind of a QCQA role with some of the right-of-way to make sure that there's that second level check, as well as FHWA's right-of-way person is also involved. So a lot of people are involved in it because you don't want to mess this part up.
Yeah, this is one of those things that has caused a lot of trouble for a lot of transactions in the past. So all of the projects that undergo this process undergo scrutiny. Has nothing to do with you. It has to do with bad actors in the past, and we just need to be squeaky clean on it.
Good point.
But to answer Jake's question, he asked about what should the communication be to the public, and the communication is that we're doing all the elements of reconstruction that includes the coming up package of design documents ready to start construction, but also to acquire right of way, permitting, et cetera. And so I think we've said that before, but I mean, that's Jake's committee. So he asked the question.
Yeah,
I think it's probably worth.
It's probably worth reinforcing, Jake, what the record of decision allows us to do, and getting into a little bit of the weeds on what does obtaining right of way mean, what does getting all the permits mean, what does getting construction ready mean. So it goes along with this kind of whole education series that we're talking about, where it's explaining what a drill shaft is, explaining what a project is. I think explaining this part of it of here's what we're doing through right of way, here's what we're doing through permitting would be another good piece for communications.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I appreciate the further clarification. I'm thinking in my head, someone says, well, how are you doing these things when you don't have the full funding secured? Having that sort of background information that we can share about the record of decision and explaining the timeline of the process is all great information.
To me, it's the record of decision. We've got special funding for this, the congressional spending. The other thing that to me just makes a lot of sense, we're spending money now to design a bridge. If we don't own both ends of it, we just wasted a whole bunch of money.
And FHWA actually supports early acquisitions when they're in direct involvement with the project. So you can go in and secure parcels so that somebody doesn't
I think what Jake was asking though is, the public may not have understood that this is a step that we're doing. And I think it would be quite reasonable to explain to them. Yeah, it's such an obvious and rational thing to be doing, but we haven't stated it. So, or maybe we haven't stated it too clearly. So let's make sure we do.
No, I think what Michael just said in terms of and Mike as well, that this is the rational process that's outlined in federal procedure, that you begin to acquire parcels now so that you're not taken advantage of later. I can give you a very bad example of 25 years ago acquiring an enormous amount of right of way for the Seattle monorail. We got a lot of grief for condemning a vast number of parcels that we then had to deacquisition. It was good for my firm, but yeah. So that process does actually take place long before the funding is necessarily in order. That's not an example that you might want to use, but you do want to say that the record of decision that was adopted by the feds is, controls this process.
Okay, looking at the schedule, folks, let's move on. Can we get a
To approve
Move to approve.
the right-of-way resolution number 2026-1 and certification of assurance.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, no opposed. Motion passes.
Okay, the last one on new business is an IGA between the Bridge Authority and the City of White Salmon. We would like to set up kind of a task order, what would be a task order basis contract with the City of White Salmon. As you know, they own some of the adjoining property on 14. That property is significantly overgrown with invasive blackberries to the point where our existing DTMs show slopes that aren't there and hide creeks, and we need it cleaned up so that the design team can better understand what we're tying into.
So basically, we can't even map it because there's so many
The mapping
blackberries
is
there.
incorrect.
Okay.
Due to some of the overgrown material there, and then there's a stream that comes out of the hillside that we need to better understand where it's coming from and what it is, and some of the elevate. When you walk out there, there's massive boulders that if you misstep, you might disappear. So we want to clean that up and make sure we can get that existing information documented. It's outside of the normal maintenance limits that the city would do for like SR 14 and what they would normally maintain. So it's beyond what they would normally do. So it's really just an agreement to reimburse them. It's a really only contracting method. We can't contract with Kiewit. We don't have them under a construction contract. So it's the most efficient way, we believe, for us to go do this.
And frankly, Kiewit doing it, it would be a lot more.
It'd be a whole lot more. Yes, it would. Yes.
So we're going to pay them to go clean up their own property.
We're going to pay them to clean up property that they are not required to clean up for the betterment of the project.
Lift the drag.
You ready for a motion?
Yes.
I second.
State the motion.
I would move that we approve the City of White Salmon intergovernmental agreement.
And I will second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Did we miss 9A2?
No, that was the one that we did for parcel 17.
We did 9A3.
No, we did that one
Two
afterwards.
separate ones.
We did.
I didn't hear us do two. Okay.
He was
I'll give, I had comments on the letter.
You don't remember
Talk to you later.
voting no and having all this frown at you?
So, okay. So do we need to open that back up or are you okay?
I just had a couple really minor comments about on the letter. I'm just
Go ahead.
turning it from it's kind of there's several negative statements in there and just turn them into positive. That it cannot be finalized as a single document.
Allows it to be modified.
It will be finalized in stages.
We can make this
So
one.
there's and maybe adding a paragraph break or two.
Grammatical changes are allowed.
Yeah, it's pretty minor.
We can make those grammatical changes.
All right, let's go forward. Informational items. Any here you want to highlight, Mike?
We're your best next meeting. We're taking your picture.
Okay.
Oh, where are you?
Wear your best.
I didn't.
Look your best.
He said best.
Look,
Yeah.
look your best at the next meeting. You're planning to take your picture, group picture. We need an updated group picture. If you all could show up, that would be even better. So we don't have to Photoshop you.
So we need to reach out to the rest of the commission that, now, I don't know how Catherine's going to do that. You're going to,
Photoshop her in or something, I guess.
yeah, Photoshop it.
The plan is next meeting, you take your photo. So.
Okay.
It's my AI Martian.
No,
And committee assignments, I guess we could bring that up next week just to validate people want to move around.
And we'll do a pretty good, a fairly extensive environmental update with E&C, and then we'll bring that to the board next week. So.
And so, and on that subject, I think Mark Fleming, Mark, are you still there? Mark had requested.
I am. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was some request made to me as to whether he could join the governance committee. We have a quorum issue then, so that would require switching things around, and we have to think about this because we do have some people who come in since the beginning to figure that
Yeah,
out.
and I think we have just an open discussion about it.
Yeah.
And we have an open spot, so we've got someone for 3 more.
Right.
Okay, anything else, Mike, on informational that you want to bring out?
Nothing else on information.
Okay, upcoming items, anything to really highlight, you can read what they are.
This upcoming policy. Continue to get our compliance. One informational thing, I guess, is that we are working on an agency annual report that you will see a draft of at the next meeting for your review and comment. So I'm getting that drafted up now. When you get it, it's from the perspective of the agency and the agency's annual report. It is not a project annual report, but an agency, and it is from your inception all the way through. And we're trying to set it up to where it'll be something every year. You'll do this, and this will be the basis of it. So this first one is a little more than an annual report.
A 2-year report.
Yeah. But it'll talk about the creation of the authority and policies and procedures and how you're getting to be compliant. And we're working on that.
Let's go around the room. Catherine, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
The Buffalo Bills are still in the playoffs.
And thank you for that. I watched the other one. I watched 49ers and the Eagles, and the Eagles didn't play very well.
I thought you were trying to get out of this meeting quicker.
I am. Okay. Going through the rest on, I don't see anybody else. Oh, Mark, you got anything that you want to address from the commission point of view?
Which Mark are you talking about?
Mark Fleming.
Yeah, Mark Fleming.
No, I don't.
Okay, let's go around the room here. Eric, anything?
No.
Okay.
We had 2 members of the public show up after public comment. I wanted to give them the option if there's anything that they wanted to say.
Well, oh, no, sorry. It's allowed to talk or nothing. Just to
Ace over king.
Yeah. I do have a question, but after once the agenda's over. Okay.
Anything?
So did you get all that nuclear waste cleaned up?
At your house.
I didn't think he's grown his green apples.
Just trying to sink your deal.
Okay, yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thanks.
I actually know. I'm going, wait a minute. Does he know?
No, I'm not talking about any
just the green.
Yeah. You know, the stuff up at Hanford that's floating down the river that's going by here behind each of the dams. Okay. With that, anybody else? Final call? We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're 7 minutes late.